Hey friends, welcome back. Today, I just wanted to go over an article that I read recently in the independent.co.uk. It's titled Just Talk, Just Say Anything, How the CV Has Forced Men to Seek Deeper Friendships. So the summary of this article here is as they grow up, men are more likely to lose friends, and the friends they do have tend to be superficial based on watching sports or playing games rather than intimacy. The pandemic is forcing this to change. So, so right off the hop, just sirens going off in my brain. Um, is the pandemic forcing men to change the amount of intimacy in their friendships, or is this pandemic just so damn hard on everybody that everyone is on the verge of jumping off a goddamn bridge somewhere? And because of that, a lot more guys are feeling a lot more pressure upon them to share their feelings because, as men, and this I speak from my personal experience, we tend to not share things unless it's extremely important. So in my Facebook feed, I've had a lot of friends, some close, some not so close, but a number of men calling for help publicly in ways that aren't typical. And is this just simply a matter of, oh, guys have a bit of distance, apart from each other, therefore they're trying to establish closer connections? Or is it, hey, there's a lot of people in this world right now who are absolutely, hanging by a thread, and they're doing anything they can to help preserve themselves? I think that's much more close to the truth. But let's explore this article here a little bit. It took a global pandemic and a badly timed breakup for Manny to realize just how far he'd grown apart from his guy friends. I guess back in the spring, he left the home he shared with his girlfriend, moved into a studio in Washington, and there's no more board games with the guys, no more Friday nights in downtown bars. And so he found himself going back to his PS4, playing Overwatch just to hear somebody's voice, online. And he also discovered the messaging app Discord and started chatting with his old gamer friends and watching them play Mortal Kombat 11, even though he didn't have the game set up himself. I as well. I have a number of channels I follow on YouTube where people will go through gameplays, they'll do game analysis, sometimes streams of them playing a game and talking about it. And even if it's a video game I've never even heard of or watched or played, I still sometimes find that content interesting because I enjoy the personality behind it. And in the same way that, men watch, let's say, football, even if they've never played football, how is that any different from a guy watching some dude play a video game, even if he's never played that game? And I think this comes down to some fundamental differences between the average man's brain and the average woman's brain. And I'll get into that a little bit later as well. So let's continue. So Manny here started recognizing how dependent his friendships had become on those Sunday football games, and noticed that they hardly ever talked about relationships or family or just generally how well they were doing. He'd never met any of their family members. I also, the last time I played team sports, played on the same team for about 5-6 years. I couldn't tell you who was married, who wasn't, who had kids, who didn't. I didn't even know what most of them did for work, to be honest. Because you'd go there, you'd play a game, or you'd have a practice, you're focused on the game or the practice. Afterwards, you'll go have a beer or something, and then you're talking about the game you played or the game you will play or another team, because that's you're task oriented as a guy for the most part. And I don't think there's an issue with that. I think that's just how a lot of men are wired. Of course, not all men are, but we're talking about these types of men who find themselves in these types of friendships and relationships. So I think that's perfectly typical and nothing wrong with that. And then, yeah, so get this. So as Manny, on a rare night, he spent catching up with an old friend in October. A mixture of vulnerability and intoxication led him to pour out his frustrations. I bet you have no idea why her and I broke up, he said. I bet you have no idea. His friend apologized. Like, okay, so either this writer is taking some serious liberty with this conversation here, or else Manny is a complete wreck of a human. Because how can you get upset at somebody for not knowing why you broke up with your girlfriend if you never told them why you broke up with your girlfriend? That's on you, dude. Like, if you want to talk about that, 100% talk about it. No one's stopping you from talking about it. No one's stopping you. If you need to talk about it, talk about it. But then getting sort of weirdly passive aggressive at your bud for not knowing why when you didn't tell him why is that's not really fair, and that's kind of a dick, to do that. So I don't know if I like this Manny guy. Right, so here we go. So male friendships are often rooted in shoulder-to-shoulder interactions, such as watching a football game or playing video games, while women's interactions are more face-to-face, such as grabbing coffee or getting together for a glass of wine, said this professor at Maryland. And that's okay. Again, I think men and women process the world differently. They're interested in different things, and they relate to themselves and to the world differently. So yeah, I don't think there's inherently anything wrong with that whatsoever. What I don't like is that this is somehow already, you can see in the article, starting to position the argument such that these side-by-side interactions that guys have is somehow less than or not as fulfilling or enriching as these female relationships, which again, that's purely subjective. But anyways, we'll continue. So yes, because of this, many men have had a harder time than women figuring out how to adapt their friendships in a pandemic that's keeping them apart. So again, we just found the solution to this at the beginning of this article. They'd already solved it, saying, oh yeah, this guy is watching his buds play video games. He's on this Discord server. So you're still able to interact with other men in the world in the way you were before, just from your own home, but doing the same types of things. Again, my own personal experience, I do watch people play video games and give commentary about it, and I get the same type of, that same social itch is scratched by doing such. So basically the article continues, as boys, male friends tend to share their deepest secrets and most intimate feelings with each other, says this professor of developmental psychology who interviewed hundreds of boys for her book. But as boys begin to enter adolescence at age 15 or 16, you start to hear them shut down and not care anymore, she says. They start to act defensive about their friendship, saying they're not gay and they're not as close anymore. You hear these expectations of manhood get imposed on them. Who are these people that these professors are finding that a 16-year-old would think that he's gay for expressing how he's thinking or feeling? Like, I grew up in rural Alberta, Canada, which is not a very progressive place in terms of the stereotypes of it. And at no point did I hear anybody say I can't express feelings because I'm not gay. That is the most preposterous nonsense. And it's almost like, it's almost insultingly so, because I come across these types of this content all the time, and where people are saying, oh, well, boys can't express themselves because they say they're gay or they're worried about being gay. Like, seriously, in 2020, that's what's happening right now? Like, not back in the 1960s, the 1950s, but in 2020, people are still, oh, I'm pretty gay, you're pretty gay. Can't talk about a feeling or else you're gay. That's bananas. Who are these people? Who are these people? That's what I want to know. Because I just, as a man, hell, I even did a ballet number in front of my high school when I was 15. I hadn't done ballet before that, but I was in drama class and my teacher said, hey, I want you to do a dance number with this chick, and so I did. Wasn't teased about being gay. That wasn't a worry. So where is this coming from? I just don't buy it. Anyways, so this person argues The lack of vulnerability in male friendships is rooted in misogynistic, homophobic culture that discourages emotional intimacy between men. Um, no, no. Um, I think that as a guy, you don't want to be vulnerable because if you're vulnerable, you can be attacked, not for being gay, but for being vulnerable. You don't want to lose position. Um, that's fair. You can talk about that if you want. As a man, you don't want to be that vulnerable because part of being a man is not having vulnerabilities, or at least being very particular about when you share those vulnerabilities. And it has nothing to do with being gay or not. That's or being misogynist. Like that's so out there and irrelevant to this conversation, and it drives me up the wall to see article after article spouting what I think is absolute nonsense. And that's the part of it that's nonsense. This conversation is good, but they get fixated on these weird talking points that just aren't valid talking points for the most of it, from what I've experienced in my own life. Um, so this kind of goes on. In 2018, the suicide rate amongst men was 3.7 times higher than among women. Yep, totally is. It's not easy being a guy, as much as some people might try to pretend like there's all this privilege and it's just easy to just wander around the world being a dude and you have all these magic doors just opening up for you. That's really not the case at all. So yeah, it's not easy. There's a lot of pressure. Um, and Yes, so surveys show men are less likely to admit than women when they're lonely. And One study, married men were more likely than married women to list their spouse as their best friend. Well, um, I think that says more about women than it does about guys, right there, to be honest. 100% it does. Uh, yeah, like it's a lot easier to talk to a female like your wife or partner or girlfriend or whatever you have about emotional things. Partly because you share a space because you're living with them, um, and yeah, so of course they'd be your best friend. I think that's super funny. Uh, that that married women are less likely to list that. Um, yeah, so then it kind of goes on from there. I've always thought it's funny that when we talk about things that are completely inconsequential, 80 to 90% of the time, his friend said over a Zoom call, yeah, like my best friends and I, our friendship is basically just sharing memes back and forth until one of us dies. That's the that's our friendship. Occasionally some guy needs a hand with something, and so you go help him out, or vice versa. Maybe meet up and go have a workout. You go do something once in a while, but that's basically it. Um, that's fine. Like I don't need guys to. I think what part of the problem is here is that um, I don't know if the emotional tapestry of men is nearly as evolved as it is with women in general. And uh, while you might self reflect a little bit as a guy, it's not really a major pastime for most dudes. And furthermore, sharing intimate thoughts about yourself doesn't seem like a lot of fun. Not because people will think you're gay, but just because there's about 1,000 other things in the day that I would rather do. If I'm seeing a friend I haven't seen for a few years or a few months or a few weeks, I'd rather do something fun than have a big emotional heart to heart about some nonsense. I think that's just a fundamental way that guys see the world differently than women. Um, and so what do we learn from this? Um, a couple of things. I think there's a few takeaways. So a lot of these articles just sound crazy to me. And so I can imagine when women read this, they say, oh my God, these poor guys are just begging to talk to somebody and they can't because they feel like they're going to be called gay if they do. No, that's not it at all. But you also see in these articles, they try to say that men should be more like women and have these same types of like coffee dates or whatever, or sit across from each other. And yes, guys, they'll do that sometimes if it's something important. But I don't think that the solution is to have guys be more like women. But that's every single time you read these articles, that's always what the solution is for these people. Um, the solution was already in there. It was, oh, hey, because of like Discord servers, because of YouTube and being involved in communities there. As a guy, you can still have your moment of watching a thing happen, make some funny comments, feel like you're part of a group. And if you need to, you can still have a private conversation with somebody. That hasn't changed. So I think that the answer is already there. That's what the answer is. Also, one thing I wanted to say is that when it comes to suicide and male suicide rates and things like that, I really don't think it's about a lack of men having other men they can talk to. In the past, I'd say 5 years, there's been almost half a dozen guys I know who've killed themselves, and they had communities of people that were there to listen. All of these people are the first people on social media posting, "Oh, you can always talk to me. You can always talk to me," and they were emotional and kind men for the most part. And I've also seen some men have moments of crisis online, and I've reached out to some of them when they were in those times. So it's not a matter of that. It's not a matter that they can't reach out or that they don't or that they can't talk to someone. They do. I think what the issue is that, as a guy, if all you're told that it's easy, that you've got privilege, that basically life on the easy street, you don't have to have a care in the world, all these feminist types always say, but you do, and you have the weight of the world on your shoulders. And then it's these same people who post articles like these online saying, "Oh, you can always talk to me, guy," who are the first people to make fun of a guy or make fun of like male fragility. Such a BS term. But they're the first ones to say, yeah, to call male fragility when in other issues, So it's more a matter of hopelessness, not a matter of talking. Like I can talk to all the people I want, but if I feel like life is absolutely hopeless, you can talk till you're blue in the face. That's not going to change anything. What changes things is actually having hope, actually being valued, having value in yourself, and seeing other people value you. Those are the things that matter. Not just having a friend to talk to when you're sad. That's not it's not why men are killing themselves in huge rates. It just isn't. Not in my experience anyway. But yeah, bit of a somber Friday, but there we are. Hope you had a good night, and talk to you again soon.